Play ball!
This is the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast, the only podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball, featuring interviews with coaches and guests from across the country.
Welcome in Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball.com, Joe Healy of Baseball America, Chris Burke is with the ESPN SEC Network.
Now from Fayetteville, here's your host, Matt Jones.
A mixed bag of emotions. It's a place I really enjoyed. I wouldn't have this job if it wasn't for that place. Basically, I'm here because of Coach Van Horn and also the players that were at Arkansas, and some of them are still there. So that's a strange balance of being thankful and appreciative and also wanting to be competitive.
That was Tennessee coach Tony Vitello. Really interesting dynamic in Fayetteville this weekend as Vitello, the former Arkansas assistant coach, brings his Tennessee Volunteers to play Arkansas at Baum-Walker Stadium for the first time. Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Jones, and this is the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. I'm not sure if anyone, when Tony Vitello left Arkansas 2 years ago, could have imagined that his first trip back to Baum would be in a series of this magnitude. With 4 weekends left of the regular season, Arkansas and Tennessee both are ranked in the top 20. The Razorbacks are number 7, the Volunteers are number 18. Both teams have really strong RPIs, and there's some thought that both teams might end up being regional hosts here in a few weeks in the NCAA tournament. Both teams are 31-11 overall coming into this series. They've both been a bit of a surprise this season too, but you've kind of come to expect this type of year from Arkansas under Coach Dave Van Horn. You know, in Van Horn's years, the Razorbacks seem like they're always going to be in the mix for something, whether it's just a postseason seed, whether it's maybe a division or a conference championship like this year. You know, Arkansas enters this series 12-6 in conference play. They're atop the SEC West and a game back of Georgia in the SEC. With home series against Tennessee and LSU, by the way, and a road trip to Kentucky, the bottom team in the SEC East, in the next 3 weeks, it seems like Arkansas's chances are probably going to be pretty strong to be in contention right up until the end of the regular season. The regular season ends with a road trip to Texas A&M. Now, Tennessee, they're probably not going to win the East, but what Vitello has done there this year, I think, has been incredible. Remember that this is a program that hasn't even had a winning conference record in 14 years. This team hasn't been to the NCAA tournament in 14 years. 2005, when Tennessee went to the College World Series, that was also their last NCAA tournament. The Vols, they played a top 5 schedule this year, and they've really held their own. They were swept by Auburn in the SEC series opener, but since then they went 1-2 against Vanderbilt, 1-2 against Mississippi State, 1-2 of 3 against Georgia, and now they're coming off a weekend sweep of Kentucky. Tennessee has won 5 games in a row and is 8-2 in its last 10 games. The Vols have the nation's top pitching staff, and that's one of the real big reasons for their success this year. Tennessee's recorded 9 shutouts this season and has the NCAA's lowest team ERA of 2.68. That should create a great matchup for Arkansas, which has really been hitting the ball well the past 2 weeks. Tennessee, they do struggle to score some, so even though its pitching is strong, the question in some of their games this year has been, will the Vols be able to score enough runs to pick up their great pitching staff? It reminds me a little bit of that 2013 Arkansas team that had the lowest ERA in college baseball in almost 40 years, but lost a lot of 1- and 2-run games just because the offense couldn't pick up the pitching staff. Now, for Arkansas, the question this weekend is going to be whether or not the Razorbacks can continue the momentum that they created last week with that 3-game sweep of Mississippi State. It was a really surprising 3-game sweep of Mississippi State because not only did Arkansas win all 3 games, but they won all 3 games convincingly, or at least the last 2 games convincingly. Arkansas outscored the Bulldogs 27-10 last week, and they held the top offense in the SEC to 17 runs below its 3-game average. You know, Mississippi State had only lost 6 times in 38 games coming into that series, so losing 3 out of 3 was really surprising for the Bulldogs. The X factor this weekend, I think, has to be that Baum-Walker crowd. Arkansas has won 85 of its past 102 games at home, including 20 of the past 23 3-game series. That sweep of Mississippi State last week, that was Arkansas's 8th sweep of an SEC team since 2017 at home. Weather's supposed to be really great Friday night. Might be a little bit dicey for the final 2 games. There's a little bit of rain in the forecast, some thunderstorms maybe on Saturday. But with Vitello's return, late starts for all 3 games, and the implication of those 3 games. I think it's likely to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, attendance weekend to this point in the season. For more on the series, we bring in now John Wilkerson, the Tennessee play-by-play man for the Vols Sports Network by Learfield IMG College. John has been the voice of the Tennessee baseball program for 22 years, and he's seen a lot from good times to bad times for the Vols. John, thanks for joining us.
Oh, Matt, I sure do appreciate it. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Hey, so kind of, John, if you could, tell me about what's the anticipation level for this series this weekend?
Well, because it's the next one, and I realize it always sounds like coach speak when you say it, this is really big. Tennessee came through with 3 straight series, as you mentioned, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Georgia, where they were all top 5 opponents. And Arkansas is right there. I mean, West leading team, you're at their place. And, of course, it highlights exactly where Tennessee went to get its current head coach, Tony Vitello. So I think there is a lot of attraction on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of storylines this weekend. I mean, you've got Vitello, he's the obvious storyline, but Josh Elander is an assistant coach at Tennessee. Alaric Solari is he signed with Arkansas out of high school, ended up going to junior college, and now he's playing for Tony there in Knoxville. And then in Arkansas, you've got Taylor Smart, the volunteer assistant coach, and all of that in addition to the fact that, hey, this is a really big series that will have a lot of impact on the SEC standings at the end of the year.
It sure will. And for Tennessee, they're doing something that they haven't done in quite some time. It has been a while since you could get this deep into the season, and Tennessee is 500 or better in conference play. And so I just think that you can't help but wonder what's going to happen next. Tennessee held its own, getting the finale at Vanderbilt. Tennessee had a chance to win the series against Mississippi State with the finale, and then Tennessee shut out Georgia in back-to-back games to win that series at home against the Bulldogs. So Tennessee, after opening with 3 losses at Auburn, has really done a nice job of really taking a step forward and competing, going head-to-head. Obviously, I think this would be the toughest environment that Tennessee's played in to this point, just based on sheer numbers. Vanderbilt, of course, is a tough place to play. Auburn is obviously a tough place to play, but when you come to Baum Stadium, it's like LSU, or now I'm sure what Mississippi State is like. You've got so many people that are there that this could be as tough a place to get a win as possible. So I'm anxious to see how Tennessee handles this next opportunity on the road against, again, a top 5 type program.
What did that Georgia win do for the program? It seems like since Tennessee beat Georgia, they've really been playing really well.
They have, and it's. I think it's just kind of reinforced exactly what they've been doing so well to take the step forward they have this year, and it starts with pitching and defense. Tennessee's got the most shutouts of any team in the NCAA. They've got the best team ERA in the country, and I just think of what they have been able to do. I mean, last year defensively they were 13th in the SEC. This year they're 2nd. So for those that say baseball starts with pitching and defense, that's a lot more accurate than defense wins championships in terms of just an adage that's thrown out in other sports. But they've gotten it done. Their offense is where they still have the most room for improvement, but they're getting enough done to let that pitching and defense take hold and be the difference.
You know, Tony Vitello has told me something along the lines of Frank Anderson was the most important hire he made after he got to Knoxville. What have you seen from Frank Anderson and what he's done with that pitching staff?
Just to see the step forward that each individual has taken, it's really been something to see because you go from guys that showcase the natural talent to now it is so refined. What Garrett Stallings is doing, what Garrett Crochet is doing now as he kind of leads off the rotation. He's moved into that spot over the last 2 series. And then you have Zach Lingenfelter, who has done such a good job this year of just getting on top of his game, not getting in his own way in regards to perhaps hitting batters or walking batters. You know, obviously that you've still had some trouble spots, but still, I just think the way that so many different pitchers have really gotten in control and just developed. I mean, that's the key word. They've developed. Redmond Walsh coming out of the bullpen. Andrew Schultz, who's a flamethrower, He can hit triple digits on the radar, but now he's also got some tantalizing breaking stuff. So I just for all the options that Tennessee has on the mound, it is a direct reflection of the work that Coach Anderson and the staff have done.
John, obviously, Rod Delmonico had such a good run there at Tennessee, and then you guys went through a number of down years. I think everybody was surprised that Dave Serrano wasn't able to win, more than he did there. What happened during that lull time for Tennessee baseball? And I know it's just the second year for Tony, but it seems like the program's on a pretty good trajectory right now. Maybe what's changed since Tony came in?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle for Dave it was a slow adjustment to what are the pinpoints of being successful in the Southeastern Conference. Dave, obviously, having taken two other programs to the College World Series, is a great baseball coach. It's just that I think he was slow to realize that he needed much more velocity on the mound, and I think that was actually the biggest problem. It wasn't so much that they didn't have offense, and I think also offensive philosophy. In moving runners and things like that, all of those things help. But I think in the SEC, you have to have power, whether it's on the mound or in the batter's box. And I just think with Dave Serrano as the head coach, the Volunteers didn't quite have enough in either category to get over that hurdle and get into not only the SEC tournament, but also the NCAA tournament. With Tony Vitello, I'll say this, the impact that he's had on the team is so visible. One, I think the guys have a great time. I think they're having a lot of fun playing ball. He keeps it fun, keeps it light, but at the same time, he's much more than a player's coach. He'll be strong in terms of what he thinks they should focus on, in what direction they should take. And it has been really something to watch him grow as a head coach. Last year, they took a big step forward from 7 SEC wins to 12. This year, of course, they're the fastest team to 30 wins at Tennessee since 2004, doing that in just 41 games. So I just think his style of play, the staff that he's put together, and the impact that he's had in just, I think, making it fun, as well as his approach and the style of play that he has this team and this program operating with, I think all of that leads to the success that Tennessee's currently enjoying.
You look at and we're still a few weeks away from, that selection Monday, but, right now the projections say that Tennessee could be a host. They are certainly a team that people expect to be in the NCAA tournament with that RPI strong strength of schedule. I wonder what have you noticed around Knoxville in terms of people coming back out to the ballpark and maybe a renewed interest in the program?
I think once we got past the weather, and that was something that that's the only drawback of the incredible new turf that they have is they can play just about anything but thunder and lightning, and they have. So I think once we got past cooler temperatures and we got the spring-like weather, I think people are really excited. And I'll say this, for the 6 years that Dave Serrano was the head coach, I think people really liked him because he's that kind of guy. So I think there was strong support for a program, even though it wasn't achieving what Coach Serrano and his staff really wanted to do, and that's getting back to the NCAA tournament. I think Coach Vitello, one, he's accessible to. I think he's awfully friendly, and I think he just gets it. I mean, he knows what goes into building a winner. He's been a part of so many himself, and I think people sense that. I think they feed off of his personality, which I think is inviting. I mean, last year when he's suspended based on getting ejected, and so he's not coaching against Vanderbilt, he has a lemonade stand on the street corner. So, I mean, I just think there are so many different things he's done to ingratiate himself to and embrace everything about being Tennessee's head baseball coach. I think fans have connected with that. And I also think, just as we saw with that scene with Rick Barnes in Tennessee basketball, I think we also got a great group of guys. I mean, there are so many just solid guys, top to bottom in the roster. And I think people are connecting with them. So I think you've seen an uptick in talent, which shouldn't be overlooked with recruiting. But I think style of play and just the winning personality that we've seen from Tony Vitello as Tennessee's head coach have all combined to generate enthusiasm and excitement about Tennessee baseball.
I mentioned earlier, Alaric Solari was signed with Arkansas out of high school from the Houston area, went to San Jacinto Junior College down in Texas, actually played with Matt Goodhart, who's Arkansas's leading hitter this year, last season on that JUCO team. And right now I think he's hitting something, John, like 85 points above any of the other everyday players. What have you seen from him, and maybe what's made him so successful this year?
Well, I think he's just been able to. It was funny. He wasn't an immediate, starter in the lineup, and then you as the season kind of progressed, I think it was really the trip to Pensacola where he broke out, and from that point on, because you had Evan Russell, who was a returning player, he got the start in left field. And then right when there was an instance where it was apparent that Solari would give you the upturn and the I guess the upper hand in defense, that's when they made the switch. And since he's been in the field, I think, one, being in the lineup every day has been incredible for him. And I think that he got off to such a fast start that's just kind of bred success. And it continued into SEC play, which was, one of those question marks. When you see somebody get hot in the pre-conference, you can't help but wonder, is that going to hold up once you get into league play? Mm-hmm. But it has. And what's been so impressive about Alaric is the fact that not only has he done so much in leading Tennessee in 2 of the 3 Triple Crown categories with home runs tied to the team lead and batting average, as you mentioned, but his defense in left field has been spectacular. I mean, here's somebody who was thought perhaps to be more of a potential contributor on the infield than the outfield. But and then last year you have a everyday second baseman, Jay Charleston, who's taken over at center. The 2 of them, along with Justin Ammons, give Tennessee as strong a defense as they've had in the outfield in quite some time. But what has impressed me most about Solari is, one, it was seamless, seemingly, when it transitioned from pre-conference to SEC play. And then you've just seen someone feed off of the confidence generated by his own success. And if he has a bad night at the plate, it doesn't affect his outfield play. His defense has been incredible. He took a home run away last week when the game was scoreless in the finale for Tennessee at Kentucky. That would have made it 2-0 Wildcats. And he's made several highlight reel plays defensively. But just the all-around play that he's shown, I don't think there's anything he can't do. I think he qualifies as that 5-tool player. And he's also a great kid, which is also something that you never quite know what you're going to get from the junior college ranks. But I think he's one of several newcomers that have really been a boost to this year's team.
Being around the program and being around Tony like you have, what have you sensed his excitement level for this weekend? Because I know in some interviews that I've heard, he's talked a lot about Fayetteville was really the one place that he had a hard time leaving.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the way that he has set the tone for this weekend. Mm-hmm. He acknowledges that he wouldn't be where he is now without being at Arkansas. Can't say enough good things about Dave Van Horn and the impact that he's had on him. But I also really appreciate how he has said, I am most excited about going to Fayetteville because I like the team that I bring with me. And he has talked to the team, as you mentioned. Not only is it Tony, but it's also Josh Elander that came from Arkansas. So there are going to be a lot of eyes watching how this team competes, operates, you name it, just based on the connection that you highlighted earlier between this program and the program that serves as its host this weekend. So I think he's anxious to see how his team competes against one of the top programs in the country, and one of the tone setters, bar setters in the Southeastern Conference. But I think it's also very apparent that he wants to see his team succeed. So I think he's excited to be back. And he says there'll be people that he can't wait to shake hands with or hug after the games are done. Mm-hmm. But he's all about getting as many wins with Tennessee as he can. And so it's not I don't think he's looking at it as a homecoming. I think he's looking at it as a great opportunity to see how his team stacks up against the program that he had an influence on.
Taylor Smart is Arkansas's volunteer coach. He'll be coaching first base this weekend like he has all season. He played 2 years at Tennessee in 2013 and 14. What do you remember about him? He seemed like he was a pretty solid everyday third baseman that last year.
Very much so. And couldn't be more excited for Taylor just for the path that he is now on. He was so likable as a player, coming from the Pacific Northwest to the Southeastern Conference. And I think he also was somebody who just made the very most of the opportunity of competing in the Southeastern Conference. Also spent a summer up in the Cape Cod League, which improved his game. And, of course, he went on and played pro ball for a little bit. But I love the fact that he came back to Tennessee, finished his degree, and worked on the coaching staff as a student assistant, and then just to see the opportunity for him since then, I not surprised at all, because he's just that kind of an individual, just tough as nails, gritty ball player, and I guarantee he's exactly the same way as a coach. And I think at some point he's going to run his own program. So it is a thrill to see him have this opportunity with Arkansas.
John, we'll get you out of here on this. From afar, what have been your thoughts about Arkansas this season? What are you most maybe looking forward to seeing as you go into this series, from that standpoint from the Razorbacks?
Well, I'm just so impressed with the sustained success. And last year, you can't help but think, goodness gracious, to be so close to a national championship, only to have it kind of taken out from under you when one play was not made. You just can't help but wait to see how that team responds the next year. And a testament to Coach Van Horn and the staff is it looks like they're right back on the same path. So they're just so impressive. They've got guys that will knock you down when it comes to, are as good as anybody on the mound, as good as anybody in the lineup. And they're going to do the intangibles. What I've always appreciated about Arkansas is their style of play, and it seems as though the pressure is constant. It doesn't matter if you're trying to get a ball past their infield or trying to get a hit off one of their pitchers or get one of their hitters out. You have to be on top of your game to succeed, and that's especially the case when you're the road team taking on Arkansas. So this has been one of the most impressive programs, the most consistent programs in the SEC, and of course that starts with Coach Van Horn.
Well, John, we appreciate your time, and hey, if the weather holds off this weekend, I think we're going to get 3 really good games in terms of attendance. I think it'll be a big-time atmosphere at Baum Walker Stadium this weekend.
Well, looking forward to it. It's obviously a big challenge for Tennessee, but it's also a great opportunity for the Volunteers. So it's as excited as I've been to get to this point in quite some time.
Well, thank you, John. Enjoy Fayetteville.
Hey, I sure do appreciate it, Matt. Thank you.
All right. That's John Wilkerson from the Vol Network on Learfield IMG College. When we come back, some thoughts from Todd Walker, SEC Network and ESPN analyst. He'll be in Fayetteville this weekend to call one of the games. That and more when we come back on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
On one hand, you say, well, it's year 2 and they're young and he's just building it. But on the other hand, you say, man, he's going to lose about 80% of his production next year. And so I say all that to say I think he's a fantastic recruiter. I think he knows exactly what he wants and what he needs. But I do think it's going to be a 4, 5, 6-year process like we saw from Georgia to be able to really judge, is he going to be able to get over the hump or not? And to be fair to him, the expectations at Tennessee should not be anything faster than that. They really shouldn't be. They gave Dave Serrano 6 years. I sure hope they give Tony the same leash.
That was Chris Burke, a Tennessee baseball alum and now ESPN SEC Network baseball analyst, a couple of weeks back on our podcast talking about the Volunteers under second-year coach Tony Vitello. We turn now to one of Chris's colleagues at SEC Network, Todd Walker, who will be calling Sunday's game along with Richard Cross on SEC Network. It's a 4 o'clock first pitch. Todd, one of the great baseball players in the history of the SEC, 1993 College World Series Most Outstanding Player. He was a first-round draft pick out of LSU, also an All-American. He's a college baseball Hall of Famer. Todd, we appreciate you joining us.
You're welcome, Matt. What's happening?
Let's talk a little bit about your playing days. You played for one of the great college coaches of all time, and Skip Bertman. I wonder, what was it like playing for Skip?
Well, you knew going in that he was a legend already, so when I got on campus, you're a little nervous and anxious all at the same time to play for a guy like that, but he was great. For the 3 years I was there, he treated me as good as anybody possibly could. He stuck me in the 3-hole, and I hit there sometimes 3 or 4 hole every game of my LSU career, and So my career was consistent, and he pumped a lot of confidence in me, and he's a big reason why I had the success I had, not only in college but after in the big leagues.
And you played on some great LSU teams. I know you won the national championship in '93. What was it like playing on those teams, and what was the feeling like when you guys went into a ballpark? Maybe knowing you were such a superior team, and I think there was a little bit of fear of LSU in those days.
It was incredible, Matt. I mean, look, I signed with LSU prior to them winning the first national championship in 1991. So I'd already signed, and then they win the national championship, and I'm a senior in high school. So I walked on campus in Baton Rouge as a national champion, even though I didn't do anything. So at the halftime of the basketball games, when Shaquille O'Neal was still there, they introduced the LSU national champion baseball team, and I'm raising my hand like I actually did something. But it was awesome. It was still cool because I got to be a part of that. 2 years later, like you mentioned, we win it again in 1993. But I remember the feeling of just winning the regional. Back then, there was not super regionals. There was only regionals. We win the regional, and I remember this is going to change my life forever. Get a chance to play in Omaha. It's something I grew up watching, all the colors, of old Rosenblatt Stadium. And we win the regional, and I thought, man, I'm going to get to play in Omaha. That was really all I cared about. Then we get there, and we win game one, and now you start thinking, I'd like to win it. And sure enough, in 93, we win the national championship, and it literally changed my life.
You were at LSU during Arkansas's early days in the SEC, and LSU really put on Arkansas. You really put it on Arkansas in those days. I just wonder what your thoughts are on how far Arkansas has come from a program, because you really got to see them on the ground floor of the SEC, to where they now are as one of the perennial favorites in this division, if not the conference.
Yeah, they've got a very similar team this year than when they when they got beat in the national championship last year. So I mean, they're one of the top teams in the country. But old Norm DeBryan back in the day, man. I mean, he was, he built that program. I always give the LSU guys credit before me for the reasons we've won the national championships beyond. In 1991, when they broke the ice, that set up the rest of the 90s for LSU, where they win 4 or 5 national championships in the 90s. Or 6. So Arkansas is similar to me. They're up and coming. Once they break through and win the first one, I think they'll rattle off a few. Dave Van Horn's done an outstanding job since he's been there, but Norm DeBryan kind of set the stage for all of that.
Have you ever had a chance to call a game at Baum or come to a game there?
Yeah, I've actually I've been there a few times before. I can't remember who they played, but it's quite an offensive site.
A little bit different than playing at the old George Cole Field.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I have some great memories from the old field because I had a hitting record at that time. I think it came down to my last at bat, and I hit a ball to left field. It got past the left fielder, and it was a base hit anyway. But I ended up getting a triple on that turf. Back then it was the old turf. That just the ball would just shoot around, and so I have some good memories of the old stadium.
What are your thoughts on the difference in SEC facilities now versus when you played? Because you think about all those old parks, it's nothing compared to what they have now. I mean, you think about what Mississippi State has done, and LSU rebuilt the box, and A&M, they renovated their stadium before they came in the league. These are great parks, maybe even better, probably, Todd, than what you saw going through the minor leagues in the 90s.
Oh, they're big league ballparks. There's no question. To answer your question, it's not even close. I mean, it's incredible what they've done. If you look at Missouri or you look at Tennessee, that's what we played in, which isn't bad. It's not bad. But now you're right. I mean, $68 million in Stark Vegas with Mississippi State's new facility. The ballparks around the SEC and what they've done, it really attracts the recruits, and that's of course the main reason. Get the guys in that can win you a national championship, and that's why the SEC has been predominantly the best conference in college baseball because of the facilities.
Let's talk some about this series this weekend, Arkansas and Tennessee. Both of them come into the series with overall records of 31-11. Arkansas's 12-6 in the SEC. Tennessee's 9-9. Are those 31-11 records? Are they indicative of teams that are evenly matched, or what are your thoughts as you go into this series?
I would argue that Arkansas has had a little tougher of a schedule. The midweeks for Tennessee aren't that flattering, but they're good. I mean, they're good. They put Garrett Crochet in the rotation now after he beat Georgia 2 weeks ago. This will be his third start this weekend against Arkansas. He's very good. He was their pen guy, so they've lost a little bit in the bullpen. But Garrett Stallings can really come at you. Lingenfelter's going to give you 95. So, Tennessee's – and they're a traditional kind of offensive lineup. They're speed up top. They got a little power in the middle. And on the back end, they're not as great, but that's, of course, any lineup. But Alaric Solari, the 4-hole, for them, the JUCO transfer, has really done a fantastic job for them in the middle of the lineup. And then Jay Charleston, their guy up top, he's got 29 stolen bases already this year. That's more than the last 2 years in the SEC, and we're not even halfway through the year, or a little further than halfway. But, of course, Opitz throws out, 44% or something like that. So that'll be an interesting battle when Jay Charleston gets on first as to whether or not they want to run on Opitz. But Tennessee's good, man. They really – they're not going to win the East because Georgia's and Vanderbilt's too tough. But they're going to be right up in there. And keep in mind, they haven't even made the SEC tournament the last 2 years. So this year they're really making a run. You
mentioned Alaric Solari. He's an interesting storyline in this series because he signed with Arkansas for Tony Vitello, ended up going to junior college and wound up playing for Tony over in Tennessee, obviously leading Tennessee in batting average by quite a few points. What have you thought of what you've seen from him this year?
Well, he can swing it. He can go to all fields. He's got a little pop. He's got 10 homers this year. And the other thing about hitting, too, is if you've got a lot of guys surrounding you like Arkansas has over the last couple of years, then it's less difficult. I never like to use the word easy, but it's less difficult to hit when you got more guys around you. Tennessee really doesn't have a lot of hitters, but Alaric Solari is one of them. He's hitting 380 with 10 home runs or something. So he's basically doing it on his own. So my thoughts are going into this Arkansas series, if they can hold down Alaric Solari and keep Jay Charleston off the bags, then it ought to be a pretty easy sweep for Arkansas. But if they don't, which nobody else has been able to really figure out how to do it, then Tennessee's going to give you fits.
Your thoughts on Tony Vitello? He's a guy that's still, really well liked here at Arkansas for what he did, 4 years as an assistant coach. What's been the key to the turnaround that he's had in 2 years in Knoxville?
I think personality, number one, and he's thrown some JUCO guys in there. Keep in mind he got Ricky Martinez to play shortstop. That moved Lipsius over to third base, so Ricky Martinez can really pick it at short. I mean, he's very good, and the dude's hitting 290 this year. Again, like I mentioned, they don't hit extremely well. They've got 39 home runs on the year as opposed to Arkansas. You guys have 50. So that gives you kind of an example of the power. But defensively, they're pretty good, especially on the left side. And but Alaric Solari definitely anchors that offense. Lipsius got 10 home runs as well. So the next closest to those two dudes are Evan Russell has 4. So, again, if you can keep the ball in the ballpark with Solari and Lipsius, then Arkansas's got a real shot.
We're seeing on Friday nights this year, Todd, that Isaiah Campbell is doing something kind of similar to what Blaine Knight did last year, and that's beat a lot of ace pitchers in the SEC. He's a guy, I think, that with 4 weeks left now in the season, could potentially be the pitcher of the year in this league. What are your thoughts on what Campbell has done and how he's really been able to transform himself from a guy who struggled last year as a Game 3 starter to being one of the premier ace pitchers in the league this year?
Isaiah Campbell last year had moments I really liked him last year. He had his moments, but of course he had other times when he struggled, like you mentioned. He's really grasped that one spot. And really, actually, if you look at the numbers, has had a better year than Blaine Knight, not to mention the intangibles, like you said, of beating aces on Friday night. Blaine Knight was notorious for that. Mm-hmm. But Isaiah Campbell's really stepped into the leadoff or the ace hole and really done an outstanding job. I lost Casey Murphy and Blaine Knight last year, but I mentioned Arkansas is similar this year to last year, and the main reason is because they've got a true ace in Isaiah Campbell. If Connor Nolan, can kind of take on that role, he's been up and down, as you guys have seen. Last week he pitched really well against Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. If Nolan can kind of step up and do what Casey Murphy did last year, we're looking at another Omaha team for sure, and possibly a national champion. So Arkansas is in prime position because of Isaiah Campbell, but the rest just kind of fall in place.
When you step into the batter's box against a pitcher like Campbell, who's got great velocity, but he can also throw 4 pitches, I wonder what's that like?
So the reason velocity is important, because if you throw I think of Eric Walker from LSU. Mm-hmm. If you throw 86, as a hitter, I can sit on all your off speed. I can tell myself just wait back and let the ball travel in, and then I can react to the fastball because it's not fast enough. So I'm covering every pitch you got. But if you throw 94, 95, and you got the off speed, and I'm sitting off speed, 94 will blow right by you. So at that point, it's not a total guess, but it's an educated guess based on what he's got and what he's going to throw. And for me at the plate with Isaiah Campbell, I've got to kind of pick and choose whether he's going to throw a fastball in this particular count or whether he's going to drop that changeup on you. Those would be my two main concerns with Isaiah Campbell. But again, when you've got velocity, that really puts doubt in a hitter's mind, and that's why it's important. But it's definitely not easy facing him. And then, Connor Nolan right behind him. I mean, Tennessee doesn't hit extremely well, so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. But again, I keep going back to Arkansas keeping them off the bases, because when they get on, if Tennessee gets on, even though Opitz is very good, they're going to try to create havoc on the base path.
This is 2 straight weeks, Todd, where the SEC West leaders playing in Baum Stadium. Last week it was Mississippi State. Arkansas swept them, and now it's Arkansas. I wonder, were you surprised at all at Arkansas sweeping Mississippi State and maybe in the manner in which they did it, holding them to 10 runs and really keeping that offense in check?
Yeah, I mean, the aberration, right, is Ole Miss at home. They only won one game against Ole Miss at Baum Stadium. Otherwise, they swept Missouri, and they swept Mississippi State. Mississippi State, to me, is the best team in the West, especially if you look at the numbers. And then Arkansas just rolls them. So, Arkansas is in the conversation for sure, and that's saying a lot. Whoever wins the West will be a national seed for sure. I mean, there's 6 teams in the West out of the Southern, Alabama excluded, within 2 games of each other. So it's still a deal where you can throw a dart at it. Anybody could beat anybody any weekend. We got 4 weekends left. So this is a big one for Arkansas this weekend. I know Tennessee's in the East, but just to keep that momentum going from last weekend, like you mentioned, having swept probably one of the best teams in the West, Mississippi State.
Arkansas, like you said, is in a position to be a regional host, maybe a national seed, could win the division, the conference. We'll see what happens. What could be this team's kryptonite, though? What could cause Arkansas to potentially slip up down the stretch?
Oh, well, that's the big X factor, right? I mean, some teams get hot, some teams don't. I mean, they've got all the parts in place. They've got a true ace. They've got a guy behind the plate that can really throw and catch. Defensively, I mean, they're good. So they've got all the pieces in place. They can hit, right? I mean, what do you guys sitting this year, like 299 or something like that? So as a team, that's not far off from last year. In fact, I think it's over 300 this year. Last year was 298. So, and they made it to the finals. So, I mean, all the parts are in place. The X factor is whether or not you play well at the end of the season, and also if you stay healthy. I mean, if somebody goes down, that's one of your key components. Clearly, that makes a big difference. So, I think you could say that about 10 teams in the country. That if they keep their pieces together, they got a real shot, and Arkansas is one of them.
Todd, I'll get you out of here on this. You were traded to Colorado in 2000, and that year Arkansas's radio analyst, Bubba Carpenter, got to get his cup of coffee in the MLB. Did you overlap with Bubba in Denver?
I remember facing him, if I'm not mistaken, in Tennessee, like when he was with Tennessee.
Okay.
Arkansas.
Right.
What did I say? Tennessee. Arkansas. We played against each other in college. I don't remember overlapping in the minors or in the big leagues with Bubba. But that doesn't mean that didn't happen. My mind is starting to go. I'm 46 years old. But he's a very nice guy. We did have time to chat. When I pass him in the hall, I'm sure I'll see him this weekend. Good dude, knows baseball. And, I'm looking forward to talking more baseball with him. He sat me down. I can't remember. I think we were in wherever we were last time I had Arkansas. And, man, he'll talk baseball till the sun comes up. And so I'm looking forward to spending some time with him.
Well, Todd, we appreciate your time and for talking baseball with us today.
You're welcome, man.
Todd Walker of the SEC Network. When we come back, we'll get a few thoughts from Taylor Smart, Arkansas's volunteer coach and a former Tennessee baseball player. We'll talk to him about coaching against the Volunteers this weekend and about this year's Razorbacks. More in a moment on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app presented by Absolute Heat and Air. Check out the all-new Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for Whole Hog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app is presented by Absolute Heat and Air. For the absolute best service, trust Absolute Heat and Air.
Oh, I think Taylor's done a tremendous job. You know, when I hired Taylor last summer, he was coaching with the Santa Barbara Foresters, and he was, you know, basically running the team and coaching third base, and, you know, just a guy that everyone I talked to about him just said he worked hard and had a lot of energy, and he's brought that here.
That was Arkansas coach Dave Van Horn on Taylor Smart, who is spending this season as a volunteer coach for the Razorbacks. Smart was a 2-year third baseman for Tennessee in 2013 and 2014. After a brief pro career, he came back to Tennessee and was the program's student assistant coach in 2017. He spent last year working with the program at the University of Arizona and also coaching summer baseball in the California Collegiate League in Santa Barbara. I recently caught up with Taylor for a feature that will appear this weekend on WholeHogSports.com. Here are some highlights from the interview, beginning with Taylor's thoughts on coaching against his old team this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. You know, it'll definitely be a little bit weird, you know, playing against the team that I was always rooting for and played for and bled orange for quite a while and still do a little bit. But, you know, it's going to be fun. They got a really good ball club, and so do we. And Coach Vitello's done a great job over there getting them on track.
Now, you were a student assistant the last time Arkansas played Tennessee 2 years ago when the team split 2 games in Knoxville. Is it going to feel a little weird coaching against some of those players, you know?
Yeah, it is. It's going to be fun. You know, I know a couple of those guys over there, the players. They're juniors and seniors now, so it'll be fun to see them and kind of see them grow. And they've had some success. And, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's, you know, definitely weird being on the other side of it. You know, I'm always in the orange and rooting for them and everything, but I'm gonna be rooting against them this weekend and wanting to take it to them. So, you know, that's just kind of who I am, and you know, I don't care who's across the diamond. I wanna beat them good.
How did you get to Arkansas?
It started in the summer. You know, as a younger coach, you're kind of always checking the internet and checking who's leaving what program and openings. And, you know, I'm very grateful to have been in the SEC as a player and as a student assistant coach. So you make some connections there. With my former head coach, Dave Serrano, he knew Coach Van Horn, and I was just coaching summer ball, you know, every day and checking the website. And I saw that the volunteer for Arkansas got the job at Abilene Christian as an assistant. So there was an opening, and my head summer coach that I worked for this past summer, Bill Pintard, he knew Coach Van Horn also. And I just had him give him a call and let him know that I was interested in the job. And I also had Coach Serrano, who knows Coach Van Horn well too, give him a call and tell him that I was interested in the job and that he thought I'd be a good fit. And Coach Van Horn liked that I played in the SEC and had a little bit of coaching experience in it too, and was young. And, you know, I think that's kind of what led me here was, you know, I played in this league. I know what it looks like to win, and I also know what it looks like to lose in this league also, unfortunately. So I think that attributed a lot of it, that I had experience in this league, and did a couple phone interviews with Coach Van Horn when I was living in Santa Barbara, and it went from there, and everything lined up, and I agreed to take the job, and couldn't be more happy to be here, man.
Taylor, I wonder what you feel like you've learned from Dave Van Horn and this coaching staff since you've been in Fayetteville.
I've learned a lot from Nate, just from the offensive side. We had very similar viewpoints on like hitting stuff, but it was hearing it from a different language, and some other things that I learned across my career and kind of meshing that together. And kind of, you know, I would say the new wave of hitting, but, you know, just some things that I believe and he believes that, you know, makes hitters successful, whether that's mental or physical. We've just kind of bounced a lot of ideas off of each other, and I've learned a lot from him. And, you know, with Coach Van Horn, I like the way he communicates with his players. You know, he's a genuine person first and then a coach. You know, he never is able to look down on anybody, a player or a coach. And I think everybody respects that. So I've kind of put that in my back pocket as something that I want to, be as I continue to go up the coaching ladder is we're all in this together. Nobody's above anybody. And just kind of how the organization of things run, of practice, and it's okay to give some guys some time off and recharge the batteries. It's going to make them want to come back here. You don't want to be in a place or atmosphere where it's a drag to come to the field. You want it to be exciting and energetic. So I think I've just learned some different ins and outs of how to run things and communicate with players. And so it's been great.
Dave Van Horn's always used that volunteer coach position to work with catchers. Chris Curry did it, Brian Walker, Josh Elander, Greg Perry last year, and now you're doing it. But what's interesting is you didn't have a background as a catcher.
No, I wasn't. I was a middle infielder through my whole life and career. And I actually, last year at Arizona, our volunteer worked with the catchers a lot. So I kind of observed him and worked with him a lot. Just kind of watching what he does, because I knew, going forward, that could be an additional thing kind of on my resume that could help me land a job. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to observe as much as I could, and he did a really good job with our catchers at Arizona. And I worked with the catchers a little bit in Santa Barbara, and then, just like anything else in this game, there's so much to learn. So I just kept learning. I talked to people that were catchers, players, and coaches. I watched a lot of video on catchers and what they do, and I just tried to learn as much as I could. And then when I got here, it was kind of the same thing with hitting. I wanted to observe these guys and know what made them successful before I started giving my 2 cents, because they're here for a reason. You're at Arkansas for a reason. You're a good player. So, I don't want to jump right in and try to change everything before I even know you. So, yeah, it's been good. I've enjoyed it a lot. Working with Casey Opitz has been a pleasure. He busts his butt every day, so it's been good.
We'll have a lot more from our conversation with Taylor Smart this weekend at WholeHogSports.com, including his influence on the team's base running this year and what he saw in Heston Kjerstad early in the season that helped Kjerstad bust out of a slump. We'll also talk to Taylor about the grind of being a volunteer coach and what a normal day looks like for him. Those are important positions on every staff. Dave Van Horn has said a number of times that he doesn't like the term volunteer coach because it degrades the position a little bit in people's minds. And speaking of which, it was a little disappointing this past week to see the NCAA Division I Council vote down the proposal to add a third paid assistant coach to college baseball and softball staffs. It'll be 3 more years before that proposal can come back up for a vote after it was voted down, in large part because the 2 big conferences, the Big Ten and the Big 12, they voted against it. There are a number of things that does to hurt the sport, but most notably it takes away what could be dozens of new jobs that could go to those hardworking volunteer assistants like Taylor Smart. And, both of the head coaches in this weekend series were among the most outspoken critics of the decision to vote down that proposal. Both had really strong thoughts on the matter earlier this week. Let's hear from them now. First from Dave Van Horn.
It's just disappointing that some of the schools, the universities that voted no, they're supposedly, supporting their coaches and their team. Some big schools, real big, and baseball, Tide Powers, and they don't want to take any of their millions of dollars and pay another coach. I get it, but at least they could give an opportunity for somebody to go recruit. That's all they do is pass it so someone can recruit. Because the biggest problem in hiring coaches, and I've had to hire a few the last few years because my coaches have done well and gone on to be head coaches and things, is that they don't have experience recruiting. So if you have a third coach and maybe he's still just working camps and getting paid that way and other ways, but at least he can go on the road and recruit. And he can show you and prove to you that he knows what a good player is or what is going to be and has experience. And it's, when you're talking about 2 of the power conferences not having, I think it should be unanimous in those leagues. you know, the Big Ten and the Big 12. It should be unanimous. It makes no sense. I feel bad for the players, you know, because it's about player wellness or student wellness. Well, they're students, and you know, we're having to go out recruiting. There's not anybody here to coach them. I mean, yeah, it's I don't know. They got together and they put together what they were all going to say and told each other what to say, and that's what they're saying, and it's kind of sad.
Did it surprise you they didn't pass?
At first I thought it would go easy, you know, I'm saying a few months back, and then we were thinking maybe it might not because some of the smaller schools, maybe their leagues weren't gonna pass it, but then a lot of them said, yeah, we want to have that option. We want what's good for college baseball. And then we hear that, you know, a week or so ago that the Big 12 wasn't going to pass it, and there's Texas and Texas Tech, and I don't know who else, but those are the two that I know. And those are pretty good baseball schools, and you just wonder how their coaches feel, how they're supported by their administration. They can't get that voted in, even if they don't want to pay somebody. As I repeat, and everybody says the same thing, you don't have to pay them. Just vote it in. Give us an option to go recruit. I'm glad I'm here. I'll just tell you that, and I'm glad that we have support.
They had tweeted that you had
I said it.
Yeah, I mean, so how important is that?
That's how important it is. I mean, if it came down to budget, well, we don't have that money in the budget. Well, here's some. I'll give it to you. Whatever, we're going to get it for you. You can have, you know, we already give them all our camp money. You know, our volunteers. We're going to hardly take any, if any. You know, just so we can have them here. They don't have any benefits, and you know, it's hard for me personally. It's hard for me to hire a volunteer coach that has family, because I feel guilty, because what if someone gets sick? You know, the kid needs to go to the doctor. You know, hopefully his wife has a good job that has benefits. So there's a lot that goes to it. It's not just baseball related.
And now here's Tony Vitello.
The rules need to be specific to the sport. We've come far enough along. Track and field in the NCAA is a huge deal. Women's soccer is a huge deal. We all need our own set of rules, and for us in particular, the scholarship things have become a joke. It's the most uncomfortable conversation you can possibly have with a human being. When you talk about loving their son, you want to coach them, you've watched them play 5 or 6 games, and oh, by the way, we need you to pay $25,000 a year to come to school. It makes 0 sense. And then 2, if we bring these guys here on partial scholarships and they're all walk-ons or they're getting 25%, and we don't have time to spend with them, it doesn't make sense, because we don't have a minor league system. You know, we need to coach our guys. Trey Lipscomb needs to be ready to be the third baseman of the future when Andre Lipschitz is gone. Well, we need guys around him to coach him, and to be honest with you, I don't have that time a lot of different days, even though I try and make it for Trey. So it makes 0 sense for programs that are making a ton of money at big major schools. I've seen some of the vote downs that are going to BCS football games and big-time sporting events. It makes 0 sense not to support it for us and for softball.
It's pretty obvious in listening to those clips how passionate those two men are about that decision. It's also obvious, I think, listening to those sound bites, how influenced Tony Vitello was by his years working with Dave Van Horn in Fayetteville. It should be a great weekend at the ballpark. It's the 5th straight week that Arkansas will play a top 20 matchup. This has really been an entertaining season to follow if you're an Arkansas baseball fan, and we're about to hit May when the real fun begins in the baseball season. All weekend at WholeHogSports.com we'll have coverage from these 3 games, plus that look at Taylor Smart and some other great stuff that we have planned on our website. Until next week, I'm Matt Jones. Thanks for joining us on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast.
The proceeding has been a production of WholeHogSports.com. Look for our latest podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at WholeHogSports.com for the latest news and commentary.